Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the podcast. That's right, the Roker Rapport is here with you again. I'm not sure how happy I am. I'm trying to sound much happier for you than I actually feel. You're joining us straight after the Southampton game, which was forgettable. It would be nice to forget about it, but sadly we've got to talk about it because that's what we do here. We've got Captain Fishpaste on with us, which will be a delight to many of you fans. And we're basically just going to see where we all went wrong. Typically, we've got Gav with us. Gav, how you doing?
Not bad, mate, not bad.
Not bad. We've got James. How you doing, James?
I'm alright, mate.
You're alright. You sound depressed. I don't blame you. What about you, Tom? How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm alright.
And Fishpaste, welcome. How you doing, buddy?
Thank you. I'm alright. I'm just going to sit here and impart wisdom, as I do.
Well, that's a good way to do it, yeah. We'll see how that goes. Right,
it rarely goes well.
Fair enough. Well, let's start from the top then, shall we? Obviously, we got thrashed by Southampton yesterday. I'll probably field this one to Tom. Tom, what did you make of that performance, mate?
Well, first 15 minutes was brilliant. I thought we were running the show. I thought this is the dawning of a new era. We're taking that confidence from the 4-0 win against Palace, spraying it about, Januzaj up dangers, making these jinking runs, Gibson and Ndong just spraying passes everywhere, and then we went 1-0 down and completely collapsed. It was just the old... It just shows to me that Crystal Palace game is just a game in isolation. We thought that we built on the Tottenham game, got a solid clean sheet, then went to Palace, excellent from start to finish, and you think this is going to be finally the time where we start our end of season run, and we somehow managed to do it again. But it just shows the mental fragility of them yet again. That once one goal goes in, then it's just they just look weak. The defenders look like they've not played with each other before. Especially after being so good and so solid against Palace and Tottenham. And then just 2-0 down at half-time. You think maybe there'd be a bit of fight, but I think we only had one shot. Then it was a pot shot from Ndong. That was about 7 minutes in. And then just every time Southampton come forward, they could have scored more if they really wanted to. It was not expected, and it wasn't as bad as a performance. It's certainly not the worst performance I've seen, but it's just galling, it's just disappointing that this just continues to happen month after month, no matter when we think we've turned a corner, and then there's just this complete mess just waiting for us. Right. And it was rubbish, in short.
It was wasn't it? I mean, we're pretty accustomed to surrenders now, I think, at Sunderland, but it's hard to contemplate sometimes how gutless some of these players can be. We've come off a good draw against Spurs, a really good win last weekend against Palace, facing a team who have won, 1 in 7. They've got one eye on Wembley. They've got a weakened central defence with no Virgil van Dijk, and Jose Fonts just left for West Ham. And we were just, as you said, we controlled the game for the opening 20. I thought Gibson looked really good, and Ndong was covering the whole park. It was really, we were really, really solid. But again, as soon as we conceded, the players they cower. They looked like they didn't want the ball anymore. They were just hoping for someone else to bail us out, and they're basically looking at Defoe. I don't think Moyes can be completely blamed for them being spineless, because whatever confidence they do seem to gain is so fragile that as soon as they go one down, or as soon as they face adversity or the sign of a slight challenge, they just seem to go into their shell. Moyes' inability to influence the game positively is a bit worrying. We very, very rarely look better after he's made a change, and we nearly always look worse. I mean, Stephen Pienaar coming on at half-time, that lad's completely finished. He just looked knackered after about 15 minutes. He's like a shit Seb Larsson, or an even shitter Seb Larsson. He's that bad. He's just stealing a living. Saints are a better team than us. Don't get me wrong, but we made it so easy for them, didn't we?
It did get a bit, there was a fair bit of capitulation there, I will admit. You're talking about Pienaar. What did you make of it, Fishbase? The subs brought on by Moyes.
I don't think that he's got much to work with, to be perfectly honest. There wasn't anyone on the bench, barring maybe a Khazri, who you would look at and think they're going to come on and make a real difference. And especially when players on the pitch are actually actively hiding from the ball. You know, we're seeing it on even on something as simple as taking hoying the ball onto the pitch. I've got people standing next to markers. Southampton didn't have to mark us. We walked over to their markers so that they couldn't receive the ball. And it was just absolute cowardice. They're making runs down, you know, like alleys, which they're never going to receive the ball. And that means that the person on the ball has to pass backwards and then we go absolutely nowhere. And it's just, you know, I think that we can sit here and can blame Moyes all that we want, really. But if he's got nothing to work with, as long as those lads are in that frame of mind, there is no influence that like he can have. And I know that it's easy to say, you know, well, their frame of mind's kind of like his job in a lot of sense. But, you know, when they're on the pitch and they're behaving like that, and it's, you know, I actually feel for him. I really, really do feel for him, because we have to watch it and he has to watch it too. And it's soul destroying. It really, really is, because they just don't. As soon as the heads go down, I mean, we've always had characters on the pitch, Cattermole, Larson, and I actually think that it was a big issue that he removed Larson, because he's the one who you kind of like, you know, him and like O'Shea were the two that he took off, and you know, those two are the ones that we know are going to stand up and fight at some point. You know, that like have done for years. But on that pitch now, there's just nobody who you would kind of put your like hat on thinking, you know, I want to send them into a battle. And there's nobody on the bench that you would want to send into it either.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I do want to come back to that subject later. She's saying about how he has very little to work with. I mean, we've really got to consider that he's had 2 transfer windows to work with as well. But before we go back to that point, what about you, Gav? What did you make of the whole game? I'm delighted to hear what you have to think about it.
You see, for me, I think we knew, regardless of Southampton's form going into the game, that they have a good side. You know, the new striker scored the week before. They spent a lot of money on him. So, you know, that's the kind of quality they've got. Players like Tadic, Redmond on the wings. The full-backs are superb. The central midfield players are consistent. You know, Steve Davis is... He's been a brilliant servant for that club, and he's always quality. He's always 6 or 7 out of 10. So we knew exactly what we were going to come up against. What we didn't do though was match them for work rate, for desire. But there was just a lack of fight. There was no sort of bottle there. I didn't think that we looked up for it. Had we been up for it and had we matched them on that level, we may well have scored goals. We may not have conceded in the manner that we did. To be honest, the way that we conceded the goals was the most worrying thing for me, I thought, towards the end of the game. It's not the first time we've seen it this season, but it still is hugely worrying, because players like Denier, Kone, even O'Shea, you know, they're the ones we're relying on now, from now until the end of the season. And, you know, they had real off days. O'Shea particularly, I do agree that his influence is huge. But, you know, he got tortured in that first half. There was no surprise he came off the pitch. But, you know, if we aren't going to match them in the quality department, which obviously we know we wouldn't, because they have that many good players, you know, Shane Long and Rodriguez sitting on the bench as an example, those are the type of players they can bring on to influence games. We brought on Stephen Pienaar. We brought on Khazri with 10 minutes ago, who just didn't look up for it. So, you know, if we can't match the quality on the pitch, you've got to better them in other areas. You've got to want it more. You've got to be more... You've just got to want the ball more, like we were last week against Palace, when, you know, you look at their team on paper, Benteke, Zaha, players like that, even Scott Dan at the back, quality centre-half, you know, they've got quality, but what they couldn't do was match us for our desire, and that's why we took them to bits in the way that we did. Yesterday, we just didn't look the same. We didn't look up for it, and that was worrying for me. I do think that the break's going to do us good. I know it's, you know, people say things like playing soon after a defeat is probably better than having the big break, because you want to get over it as a player. You want you want to put things right. But from my perspective, I do think you look at the back of the results. December was massive for us. I mean, we played 6-7 games, 6 games in January. We've already played a couple of times this month. I think the break's probably going to do the players good, and it's needed. So, even though we've lost, I think the time for reflection is needed, because otherwise, we could have seen more of these type of results if we played next weekend, for instance.
Very good point. I mean, we've been talking about who didn't really perform that well and who we'll be relying on, but Tom, what about, was there anyone who came out of that game with any kind of honour still intact, a bit of dignity?
Tough question.
We didn't, but
Manolo Gabardini was pretty good, I thought. Like I said, that first 20 minutes, everything just seemed to click, and I thought the axis of Gibson and Dong in the middle was working really well. But then when that went to pieces, he's not one to get praise often, and everyone seems to hate it when he does get praise. But I thought Januzaj was the only one who would give us any form of creative outlet from the beginning. Again, I'm basing it off the first 20 minutes when he was beating players. He had a very good chance. He had a chance on the edge of the corner of the box. It was like a big knacked clearance, and he curled one and it got deflected. Then he put a very good. It was a run and pass for Defoe, and then, well, unlike Defoe, I think he was coming out a bit too quick, and he just wasn't ready for it. But yes, I don't know. The defence was terrible, and then it just all went to pot. When I can't really pin anyone who was that good, and there wasn't anyone that was like so bad. It's just. Maybe I'm just getting immune to these kind of performances now. It's not like they're not shocking anymore. Getting walloped 4-0 at home isn't shocking anymore against like mid-table teams. Like, for instance, Southampton have lost to like Burnley. I think they got beat off Leicester. And it's just like, why can't we? This is a team you should easily put away, because they've played more games than anyone else this season. They've got an eye on Wembley, and we just let them, like many teams, just come up and tickle our bellies and be rolled over. Good players, don't know really, don't care.
Pretty damning from Tom. Fair enough. What about you, Jim? What do you make of it? Any decent players coming out of that?
I thought Ndong was okay. I mean, again, as Tom said, no one came out with a lot of credit, but I did think he was one of the few who didn't shy away from wanting the ball. He covered quite a lot of ground, as he usually does. That's all. To be honest, that's all we had. I thought he was the only one of the midfield three after they scored that we had any sort of stamp on the game. It was just, and even his stamp on the game was pretty minimal. We were just pretty dire, weren't we?
Yeah, that's true enough. Can't really get much.
Sounded so down there. I am sorry.
You sound down anyway. No one complaining. I'm sure everyone's listening to this, like depressed anyway. For me, I'll be honest. I'm quite a pessimist. So I was furious by the time they'd scored the second goal. So arguably, I mean, we've spoken before about Ndong. Statistically, he wasn't as good as he typically is when it comes to the stats in the game. He gave away the ball more than most, from all accounts. But what about Fishbase? What do you reckon about players that came out of that? Anyone decent? Anyone came out with a decent performance?
Well, I can't say his name, but I'll just say the lad who scored the own goal.
Denier.
I thought it was unfortunate the way that he scored the own goal, but I think he was the only one who looked like he was having any kind of assuredness on the pitch at all. I wouldn't go as far as to say he was good. I just don't think that he stank the whole stadium out like all of the rest of them did. Literally all of the rest of them. And I'm a big fan of Ndong and everything, but I thought that he was poor. I really, really did.
Fair enough. I mean, what about you, Gav? Did you make anything out of that and take any decent players from that? Any good performances? What about Oviedo?
Yeah, I was going to mention him. Yeah, I think probably Oviedo had a decent game. Nowhere near as good as he did last week, mind, but he definitely put a shift in. I think you kind of have to sympathise with players like him and Gibson in a way. They've been thrown into this. Ideally they wouldn't be, but they have. So you're going to have to expect inconsistent performances, I guess, until they find their feet. We've seen it with Ndong, haven't we? Really, we talked about it last week. It took him a while to get going. When he did, it seemed to be clicking. Obviously, he wasn't as good yesterday, but he still put himself about, was wanting the ball. Other than that, I'm really struggling to find a decent performance out of anybody. I think when you get beat 4-0, it says it all, really, doesn't it? Yeah. Unless sometimes it happens when your keeper has a good game, but I thought I was at an absolute stinker again.
Yeah, I completely
crap.
I'm
sorry. He really is. I think he transmits anxiety to the whole back four. I don't rate him at all. I think he's really shaky. I don't think he commands himself well enough, and I just cannot wait till Pickford's back. I think Mannone, he doesn't look like a keeper who is Premier League standard in my eyes anyway. I think we need a bit more authority. Also, I mean, Pickford almost wins you a game, I mean, there's a couple of their goals where you wouldn't directly blame Mannone, but you would certainly say that, like, he probably should have done a bit better,
Does that take the official tally of goals conceded by Mannone to Southampton to 12, or is it larger than that? That's what I'm curious. I don't really want to look that up, but yeah. Moving on, we've got some questions on Twitter as we usually send them out, and got some decent ones back in. I say decent. Everyone's as depressed as we are, so it's tempered pessimism. Mark Lee, was our win against Palace a fluke, or are we genuinely improving? I'm going to hit up Gav with that question. What do you reckon? A fluke, or are we genuinely improving?
I don't think it was a fluke. I think we caught Palace on a bad day. I think they underestimated us completely, which was why we won the game. It was it was over in a spell of about 3 or 4 minutes, wasn't it? I think the manner of that performance was impressive because we took the team to bits devastatingly, which we don't usually do. Now, I think this week's result is probably proven that it was probably more of a case that Palace are just really bad rather than us being really good last week. We have a player in Defoe who can win you games. We've known that for 2 years now. The issue is the players around him aren't good enough to put in 2 performances back to back, which win you games. And sadly, it was proven this week. I thought in me, deep down in my heart, I did really think we're going to build on this and we're going to do something at Southampton. I looked at their form. I thought won 1 game in 7, lost the other 6, can't win away from home. Manager's under a bit of pressure because he's picking the wrong players. I thought this was a real opportunity to kick on, and I did think that would do it because everything seemed to click last week. I saw no reason why it wouldn't this week. Missing Rodwell, for instance, it shouldn't have been a big deal, but I think it was because I'm not his biggest fan.
Fight, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. We just lacked something. I don't know whether it's Seb Larson. He just doesn't impress us at all. Hasn't done for a long time. And I wonder whether he would have actually played even if Rodwell was fit. I think maybe Rodwell and Gibson might have played with Ndong. Whether that would have made a big difference, I don't know. Probably not. I just think it's disappointing how we weren't able to back the last game up because we are in a position where we can only save ourselves. The teams around us are only going to lose games so long before they start picking points up. And it's amazing, really, that we're still within touch and distance because, we've been that bad this season, and then we're bottom of the league, and yet yesterday we could have come off the bottom and out of the bottom 3 with a win. Now that amazes me. And I said it in a bit that I wrote for the site today. If that's not enough to motivate you as a player to win games, or at least show that you want to win, then what is? Because we've got to, as a player. It's in the back of your mind. You're like, right, today we're playing an out-of-form team at home in front of our own fans. There's going to be 40,000 of them. What else do you need? What else do you need to motivate you? Knowing that winning that game could take out the bottom 3, they didn't look up for it at all. I just thought it's poor preparation on both parts of the manager and the players. I thought they just maybe they underestimated Southampton a little bit, like Palace did us last week, because we were set up in exactly the same way and expected the same results, but unfortunately we just weren't good enough. We didn't press high enough up the pitch, which made it very easy for Southampton, because their best play comes from out wide, and as you all know, we've got virtually zero pace in our team, which then makes it very hard for us to get forward and break against them. So yeah, not the best. I say I'm pretty despondent. Like, I can't get myself back in that positive frame of mind that I was in last week. I feel probably more down now than I have at any point this season, because they really let us down yesterday. They weren't able to follow up that good performance last week with another, and that's pretty galling, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. On that note, I mean, obviously there was an opportunity there, we felt. What do you make of it, Tom? Do you think that's an opportunity missed? Should we have taken more from that? I mean, obviously we want more from that, but is that a real opportunity considering the games that we've got coming up and what we've actually got left to play for?
Oh yeah. The run of fixtures after we come back from this little break, they're pretty hard. I mean, I haven't got it in front of me, but away at Everton, and then we've got massive games against both Middlesbrough and Burnley, and if they can't. And those games are the one. I mean, Burnley not so much, because I think they'll be fine. But against Middlesbrough away, I mean, what? Man City as well. Great, Man City. Yeah, Man City on the telly.
That speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah, Man City on the telly. If we can't get ourselves up for a game where it should have been meat and drink, as we've mentioned, they'd lost 6 out of 7, and it's a team that can't win away. They've got no defence, low on confidence, cup final coming up, and we just as always like Sunderland, just let them come up and just help themselves. We've seen it so many times over the years. Teams like Aston Villa, Norwich, just come up and just slaughter us, because we just don't want it as much as they do. And I know we say it every year that we don't know how we're going to get out of this, but when is this resurgence going to start? Because under Allardyce, it started in the at the turn of the year. We won very important games against Swansea and Aston Villa, and then from about February onwards, we beat Man United, and then we went on this not incredible run, but just a good, solid run, not losing many matches. Whereas now we've won one game in January. Sorry, we didn't win any games in January. We've won one game in February against a Crystal Palace team, are one of the worst I've seen in the Premier League, and will probably come down with us. And the games against Southampton, the mid-table teams who have pretty much nothing to play for, they should be battering them. You've seen how Burnley have just been, all they've done is just win the games at home, and that should just be it. You create your fortress. You don't, the Stadium of Light is not a fortress, and it hasn't been for donkey's years. Teams know that they can come up here, one goal in, that's done. That's their afternoon finished. And it's only on these rare occasions where the stadium's bouncing, and then we pull out a result. It's usually the atmosphere is usually flat. There's not a dig at the fans by any means, because we've had to sit through rubbish for years on end. The atmosphere's flat, the team's flat, and then we had about, like you said, it was perfect yesterday. 10-minute spell, didn't capitalise on it, go into our shell, and that was it. Awful. And these coming weeks, I mean, does anyone honestly think we'll go to Everton and beat them, or go to Middlesbrough and beat them? Although I can tell you now, the Middlesbrough game will be 0-0, because they just draw every game 0-0. Like I said,
you're asking the wrong person if you think I'm going to go.
Yeah. The Palace game was amazing, but it just looked like, it looks more and more like a complete fluke, a complete anomaly. Unfortunately, sorry.
Yeah, I suppose that's it. That's all there is to say about that. Well, regardless of that, obviously there were some other results from the weekend which you could argue were favourable for us. What would you make of that, Fishbase? Do you reckon there's still a possibility, there's a light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, I think we've been in worse kind of spots than we are this season. I think 2014 we were completely gone, so I think you've always got to have hope. If we can be this bad and be just within one win of being out of the relegation zone, then I think that's kind of it offers a lot of hope, because it says how bad everybody else must be that they can't cut us off at the bottom. I think before. I mean, I know that a Palace game kind of like skewered the expectations in a way, and then it becomes a missed opportunity, really. But I think that if we went into the games against Spurs, Palace, and Southampton, I think most of us would have taken 4 points out of them. Would have kind of accepted getting beaten by Spurs, would have been thrilled with a point against a Palace, and we would hope to have beat a Southampton. I think if it happened that way, we would all be kind of like sit here looking back at it, thinking it's not a bad run, but it's just because of the manner of the defeat. I think that kind of like makes it hurt a lot more. It makes it look much worse than it is. But you could also say that if you were only going to win one of those 3 games, and we won the one that we needed to win, that was the one that we really, really needed to win. That keeps everybody else down there. So I do kind of see. I don't think I've got a lot of faith that things are going to change because Saturday was. I mean, let's face it, it was as bad as anything that we've ever seen. And we've seen 5 years of total, nonsense there, and that was as bad as I thought that Stoke was bad, but that was even worse. So, I mean, I don't have a lot of faith in this squad, but I do have a little bit of hope just because, I mean, you only need one good run. I think if we get one good run, we'll be fine. I think it's all about who peaks at the right time. We've shown that, year on year now. It isn't about who starts the best. It's about who's safe at the turn of the year. It's about who peaks at the right time. They're the ones who survive. We showed it. Leicester showed it. Plenty teams have. There's a lot of games left to play. It's looking bleak, but it was looking bleak before we played Palace, and then winning, everyone's thrilled again. Everyone's up for it again. So I mean, it can change. It's just. At the minute, it just stings like hell because it was just so bad. But it can change.
I'd agree with you. It isn't all doom and gloom because, as Gab said just before, the standard in the league it's not that great. I mean, we've been predominantly shit for the whole season, and we're one win off. I think 17th place, and you think, as Michael's just said, if you can put a couple of results together, I mean, you can get out of it. I mean, Leicester look like they're in complete free fall. I mean, they were, again, absolutely dire against Swansea today. I don't think Borough are anything to shout about. They can't score goals. They look fairly solid, but, 1 point every couple of weeks isn't going to keep you up. You look at the upcoming fixtures, and if you can get something... if you can get, at least a point away at Borough, Burnley aren't anything really on the road. So, I mean, we should be looking to beat Burnley. And then you've got Watford, Leicester. There's some games in there. And if you can get yourself, 6 or 7 points from those 4 games, you probably jump in a couple of spaces and staying in touch. As long as we're still in touch going into the last 4 games when we've got, Bournemouth, Hull, Swansea, and then we go away to Stamford Bridge at the final day of the season. I don't think we're out of it yet. The problem we have is it's this soft underbelly we have. We need to make sure that maybe we need a Lee Cattermole back. We need another leader, don't we? We need someone who's going to go and grab a game by the scruff of the neck, or maybe grab one of his teammates by the scruff of the neck. Because that's what we don't have at the moment.
Or grab an opponent by the scruff of the neck, or grab the ref by the scruff of the neck.
Grab anyone.
The fans by the scruffs of their necks and batter everyone up and down the pitch, because that's all we really want to see. Just turn it into a blood sport so we can all have a bloody good time.
Well, we need a bit of passion, don't you? Hopefully, when we get a couple of these players back, I mean, Pickford gives you passion. Cattermole will give you it. I mean, I don't know how far away Cattermole is from coming back, but I mean, we should be looking at we need him to make a massive difference.
Is that too much pressure to put on someone like Lee Cattermole?
He thrives on it though, doesn't he? I mean, he's the kind of player. I mean, he's got broad shoulders.
Certainly, I agree. He's got broad shoulders, and he's certainly no stranger to this sort of. Well, he's no stranger to Sunderland, is he? Really, this is a very unique Sunderland issue that we have. It's it's something very specific for us. But with regards to whether or not he'll make a difference, of course you hope he's going to make a difference, because he's one of those characters. He's a proper leader on the pitch. He's aggressive. He sets the tone, doesn't he? At the start of the game, he'll go in on someone if he can get away with it. If the ref's not looking or whatever, he'll set the tone, and he won't allow younger players around him. But my counter-argument to that is, and I'm only spitballing here, I haven't really thought about this beforehand, but when you consider that Moyes has brought in all of these experienced players, and when I say experienced, I mean old, essentially. They're all old heads in the dressing room, aren't they? So will he actually have the same effect? Will it be the same as working with some younger foreign players, or indeed just foreign players who are coming in, they're still learning the ropes? Is it going to have the same effect with predominantly British players in their 30s? Is he still going to be able to like shut up to Gibson and sort him out? Do you know what I mean? Is that really going to happen? He's going to turn around to Stephen Pienaar and be like, just do your fucking job? Do you know what I mean? That's the sort of thing I'd be interested to see.
To be honest, that's a really good point. I genuinely haven't thought of that. I mean, you would have thought someone like Gibson, he's from Derry. I mean, he's going to be tough. You know, I think Gibson is a good signing, and I think once he gets a bit more match fitness and he gets a bit sharper, I think he'll make a difference, actually. You'd like to think that Lee Cattermole, no matter who's in front of him, he's going to say what he thinks, and he's going to... He cares. I think he cares more than... He knows that he cares more like a fan, doesn't he? I mean, it sounds a bit cliche, but he does. I think he wears his heart on his sleeve, and you'd like to think he'll still have that impact. Or we bloody hope he still has that impact.
Yeah, it's the hope. It's the hope that kills you, though, isn't it? What do you make of it, Fish-Based?
I just think that, I think if you're comparing a Cattermole with someone like a Gibson, Cattermole in terms of years, he hasn't. I think he isn't as old as like Gibson, but I think he must have played about 3 or 4 times the amount of games. He's got so much more experience just because he actually started early. I think that's got to count for something when people listen to him, and we've seen him pull people like O'Shea, like around the pitch, and Brown when like he was here. I think if you're a leader, which is what he is, I think people listen to you regardless of your age. I don't think that really comes into anything.
Certainly, I mean, I wouldn't argue that it was so much about his age, but as I say, more about these players have been around the block as well, sort of thing, and arguably a lot of them have come in here for their last payday, or we could say their last attempt at getting their careers back on track, or just trying to squeeze as much blood from that stone as is possible in their later years. It's an interesting topic, though. It's certainly up for debate, but of course, because we're limited by time, and we certainly want to cater to the people, we have to bring up New York, our trip to New York, the squad's trip to New York. Now, this has been quite a contentious subject. Many people, former players, local reporters, national reporters, for whatever that makes a difference, to be honest, whether that means anything to you, and indeed the fans have had their say about this. Pretty divided, I would say. It's pretty. It seems to be like a pretty much 50-50 split between the fans over whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. And I suppose it really comes down to whether or not you think that it has any point, that it serves any purpose. And there certainly seems to be a lot of confusion and a lot of grey areas, really. No one seems to know exactly what they're going for. Are they going to be training at top-notch facilities? Are they not? We've had some hilarious arguments on Twitter about this, but I'm going to give it over to Gav, because Gav certainly has something to say about it. What do you make of it, buddy?
I find the whole hysteria over the squad going abroad, regardless of where it is, pathetic, if I'm honest. I don't find it relevant where they're going, as long as they're doing something which breaks up the monotony of training every day, which clearly isn't working because we're bottom of the league and we can't string 2 results together. I don't see why it's an issue. I've seen. Well, I had this argument, as you all seen, with Graham Anderson on Twitter, the former Sun and Echo journalist. He was of the belief that it was pointless and that we needed to go somewhere where there was warm weather training, because New York isn't renowned for its fine sporting facilities, I guess, or team bonding facilities. And I was, kind of thrown off by it, because I think the whole point of the trip isn't about that. It's about getting these players away together as a group, spending time together, getting to know each other more, getting to know the manager more, bonding, enjoying themselves, maybe, just something different. We have to try different things if we're going to survive, because whatever we've done for the first, God knows how long, many months we've played so far this season isn't working. We're bottom of the league. We don't look like getting out the bottom three anytime soon. So I'm not saying that going to New York is going to turn our season around, but what I'm saying is it could be beneficial, and if it is, then why is that a bad thing? Why is that a bad thing in anyone's book? I can understand that in many people's eyes, it's a bit of a treat. They're going to go and watch some sport, and they're going to visit a few landmarks and things like that. And we've just been hammered, so people are seeing it as a bit of a treat for the players. But at the same time, I think they're missing the point. I don't think it's a treat. They were going regardless of the result yesterday, which to me makes all points since irrelevant. They're going for a specific reason, and that's the bond off the pitch. If it works, if we come back and we look a lot better, then great. If we don't, then I'll eat my words and I'll be like, yeah, fair enough. But at the minute, I can't see why anybody has an issue with us going and trying to do something different, which is a break-up of the monotony of day-to-day training in Sunderland. The weather's going to be worse than it is here for a start, so it's not as though they're going somewhere and being pampered. They're going somewhere just to change it up, and for me, that can only be a positive, if anything, because whatever we're doing now just doesn't work.
Yeah, I'm with Gav on this entirely, really. I mean, I think when you're sitting there in the ground and it's freezing cold and you're watching your team getting absolutely stuffed and putting in no effort whatsoever, I think it's very easy to kind of like resent it and kind of like, in fact, you almost bay for blood, don't you? You're kind of like thinking, well, I want them to suffer for this, for putting me through this and like doing this. I don't want them to get treats and everything, but at the end of the day, it's more about what's going to work for the club and work for the team, and they are footballers, obviously, but they're also people, and people need a break. People need to relax. Brian Clough always used to say, it's that the players would only play their best if they're relaxed and don't have stress, and they've had a bit of R&R, and it must actually be difficult for them, having this constant concern about a relegation, just as it is for us. So I just think that, yes, it's annoying. It was cold. We got stuffed. We should make them suffer. But, there's a much larger picture here. There really is. And I don't think that it can do any harm, but it might just do some good.
Yeah, I'd completely agree again. I'm glad we're all on the same page here, because I think some of the things that's been on social media have just been, as God said, but pathetic, really. I mean, it's almost like we are a bit jealous. They're all going off to New York for a week or so. But, I mean, anything that breaks up the monotony, and I guess anything that brings them together. I mean, getting away from the city, getting away from the club, getting away from I guess the UK and the spotlight of the Premier League, that might make a huge difference. If it brings a team together as well, it'd be fantastic, because team spirit and I guess togetherness, as cheesy as it sounds, has kept us up in past seasons almost, hasn't it? And if this contributes even 5% towards that, then it's worth it. It's not like they're going to be out there and going on the piss every night, is it? They'll still be training, and I think it's a decent idea, and I don't see how it can harm, really.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, while I do ultimately agree with all of you, the hysteria, the mass hysteria that's followed the announcement that they'll still be going on their long-planned journey, regardless of the result, it's a bit much. It's a bit much, but as Michael says, I can completely appreciate that. You do want them to suffer. You do want them to be punished in some way, physically, mentally. But if you really take a step back and you really look at what you need, the last thing you need is a punished squad. The last thing you need is a squad that's down on itself, that knows the fans hate it and that they don't get anything nice as a result or anything like that. But yeah, with regards to that, what actually concerns me about this trip to America is something actually taking us back to Sam Allardyce. I think he said it in his autobiography as well, actually, but he also said it when he was here. It was more to do with pre-season, taking them to America, taking any squad to America, and he described it as a waste of time. He thought it was a waste of time. It was too long a journey. You had to deal with jet lag. It wasn't really worth it because they were perfectly fine examples of brilliant training facilities and team building activities much closer to home, which were cheaper. They were easier to get to. They were, all the more efficient. And when we're looking now at, I mean, again, it's hard to make this comparison because we're not entirely sure what's going on with the injury problems that this squad has. But we've made, obviously, at the start of the season, we made some sort of connections there. But why is it that Sam Allardyce can keep these players fit when another supposedly pedigree manager can't do that? And again, a manager who's been training squads for a long time. Why are they not able to do it? Is it just the players? Potentially, yeah, because we've got Catamol, who is not exactly constantly fit. Do you know what I mean? He suffered injuries before Allardyce showed up, and he suffered injuries before, after Allardyce showed up, obviously. With regards to Moyes actually getting anything out of it, whether there'll be a genuine boost or a focus from the team, we don't know, do we? Because it's all at high club level. Do you know what I mean? And obviously this thing was planned a long time ago. This was planned before, well, a long time ago in football terms anyway. It was planned during this break. This break's been set in place for a while now. It's been written in stone. And that's the decision he's made. I suppose ultimately we just, as you say, we have to let him take them abroad and get on with it and see if they actually come back feeling better, see if they come back feeling more united. It's interesting though as well, I'd just like to throw in again, when you consider the hashtag Keep the Faith sort of public relations campaign that we seem to have going now at the club, it does make you wonder about Bain's involvement in this sort of thing, whether or not he has those sort of connections to make that happen. I think ultimately the point I'm trying to get at is that, yeah, same as all of you, if it works, fantastic. If not, Gav says he'll be eating his words, but I'm not sure that he would even have to eat his words because it won't actually be his fault, will it? We can't guarantee that if they'd gone to Austria or stayed in Sunderland that they're actually going to perform any differently. So there's obviously some grand plan there from people who get paid a lot of money to make these decisions and have a lot of experience making these decisions, and maybe we should just trust them with it and see where it goes and put our ire to one side for the time being at least.
Let's not forget though, Damo, Sam took the players to Dubai last year, and we were in a rut then, and they went abroad. He called it a mini pre-season, didn't he, or a mini break? Because a lot of managers are of the belief that we do need a break over the winter. And like I said earlier, we've played 6 games December, 6 games January now. There's people with an old-fashioned mentality that think, well, they're just footballers who get paid a load of money and they need to just get on with it. That's how many games they've got to play to do it. But at the end of the day, they're still human beings. They're still, flesh and blood, and they need to be rested. So if this is seen as beneficial in that sense, then I honestly can't see why it's a big deal. Like I say, Allardyce took the players to Dubai about this time last year, didn't he? After all the games in January, and we stayed up. It could have been that break did us the world of good and set us off. You don't know really. And Moyes has done this before. He took his players to New York before when he was at Everton. He actually said that in his press conference when he was asked about it. He said he's done this before and it worked, so he wants to try it again. Well, by all means, do it. In my book, it doesn't matter what part of the world. He could have told us that they were going to the south of France for a couple of days, and he's done that before at Everton, and it really wouldn't have bothered us, because at the end of the day, whatever they want to do, wherever they go, it's obviously being seen as beneficial to a longer term goal, which is, of course, keeping us up and getting the players in a frame of mind for what's going to be a tough run of games. Now, if taking them to another country is going to do that, then just let them get on with it and don't bitch and moan about it on Twitter. I know. Obviously, people aren't going to agree with what we're saying here. There are people who think that they don't deserve it, but at least give them the chance to just go away, try something different, come back, and then see what happens. Because at the minute, whatever we're doing isn't working.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose that's ultimately the point. We're running out of time. There's some fascinating points been raised, but just on a side note to that, the way our fans have reacted, or the way a large amount of our fan base has reacted, are we all under the general consensus? Do we all generally agree that there is some sort of burgeoning division between fan base and club. I mean, obviously, we're in a rut. It's bad for everyone. People spend their money. They suffer these horrible temperatures and these horrible performances, and they get personally angry. But in reality, are we looking at something different now? Are we looking at something different compared to the last few years where we were all able to say, oh, well, get behind the lads, do you know what I mean? We'll be able to push forward through this. We'll have our annual run of form, 10 games or so, and we'll somehow stay up just by the skin of our teeth? Or is it fair to say that it's gotten to the point now where, also due in part to Moyes' negativity from the very beginning of his tenure, there's certainly an expectation from the fans that this is all going to go horribly wrong, and this is finally the season that we bite the bullet? What would anyone say about that? Is that too far?
I would say so.
Too far?
I don't think it doesn't really feel any different to any other season. I think people have short memories. I mean, we've been just as despondent every bloody season, haven't we? I think we can still get out of this. I think the fans on the whole I think everyone's behind the lads, and I think all we need is a couple of wins. We saw the positive reaction after the Palace result. I know it was a 4-0 win, but I think even if we'd have ground a result out, you can see the positivity come back. We're all, as football fans, I think we're naturally fickle, aren't we? When we get beat, it's the end of the world, and then we win, everything's rosy again. So, if we can get a good couple of results over the next coming weeks after the break, I'm still positive and still optimistic that we can get out of it. But that's just me, I guess.
Well, that's it. I suppose at the end of the day, all we have is hope. All we have is hope and faith. So let's keep the faith, hashtag, and get behind the lads and all that jazz. And hopefully it will pay off. Hopefully they'll come back from New York with a new spirit, a newfound bond that's going to help us stay up for just one more season. Well, that's all we have time for. Thanks very much, lads, for joining me. Thanks to you and the audience for listening. Don't forget you can subscribe on the Acast app and on iTunes. Hopefully, well, I'm not sure if we'll be back next week or not. We'll make a decision on that afterwards. Maybe not. If not, we'll see you after the next match, and hopefully you enjoy your time not witnessing Sunderland lose, or not witnessing Sunderland win and then lose immediately afterwards in order to really kick you in the guts. So yeah, that's all we've got time for, and this is the Roker Rapport signing off.